10-minute jazz lesson, episode 59. Hey, welcome back to another episode of the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast. My name is Nick Manella. I'm the creator and host of this show, as you hear me say every single week. But if you're brand new to the podcast, make sure that you check out our website, 10minutejazzlesson.com. That's the number 10minutejazzlesson.com. And there you can find all of the PDFs for every single episode that we've ever made. And those are free to download. Just simply check out the show page and you can find the link to that. Also, whether you are a brand new listener or you're a veteran of the show, please consider signing up for the Inner Circle membership that we have on our website. For only $10 a month, you can support the podcast, make sure that it comes brand new every single week with some awesome content for you, and you get some great stuff in return. You get a full transcription from a different instrumentalist every single week. You get the vocabulary from those transcriptions pulled out and put on a separate sheet for you so that you have a ready-made vocabulary list to work from for that particular month. So that's only $10 a month. Click on the Inner Circle tab on our website and sign up today. We really appreciate it, and thanks for being the faithful listeners that you are. All right, let's jump into today's episode. So today we're going to look at something from one of my absolute favorite musicians of all time, Joe Lovano. I know I do a lot of saxophone stuff on this podcast, but I got to tell you, it's basically just because I am a saxophone player, so that's most of the material that I am studying throughout my weeks of practicing. And when I come across something, I like to put a little note on it and bring you these concepts that I check out. So if you think it's saxophone player heavy, it is, but I'm doing my best to try to touch on a bunch of different instruments so that we have more of a well-rounded education. But I couldn't ignore this lick that I found this week, and I think it's a really important thing to study. So if you look at your example sheet, we're going to be taking a look at the first lick that is on that sheet. And this is from Joe Lovano's solo over the great Charlie Parker tune, Donna Lee. And this is just a short little 4-bar segment that he plays. But what I really think it does is it shows us how to use intervals in a really, really excellent way. And the way that Joe is mixing up his intervals so that he's not using a predictable pattern can really be a great thing for us to work on and come up with a couple of exercises on how we can kind of emulate this and start to sound better. Where imagine if you are starting to play thirds in part of your solo. Well, thirds sound great, but what if you could mix a couple of fourths or fifths into that? It would sound even better, and it would sound a heck of a lot less predictable. And that's one thing that none of us want to sound is predictable. So let's check out what Joe does. First, I'm going to play the lick from his solo, and then we're going to talk about it a little bit. So on top of Joe's incredible sound and his sense of time, he also has this incredible harmonic sense where he can combine all of this different material, and there's also no limitations that he has on the instrument, which is pretty incredible. I mean, that's something that we should all strive to achieve. All right, so what we're really going to look at is the second and third measure of this line. So it starts on the A above the staff, and then is followed by some 16th notes. And then on beat 2, we start to see these intervallic relationships develop where he's not sticking with one in particular. So if you look at beat 2, he goes from F sharp to D, which is a major third down, right? And then he jumps up to A, which is an open fifth. So from D to A is an open fifth. And then he goes from A back to F sharp, which is a minor third. So in the span of, 2 beats, we've already seen 3 different intervals. A major third down, a perfect fifth up, then a minor third down. Then he comes up a half step to G on beat 4, and then he goes down a perfect fourth to D So now we see another fourth. So we've got all these thirds and fourths kind of mixed in together. Then we see just a regular whole step interval between the D and the C for the downbeat of the next measure. Then he moves down another whole step to B flat, but then he jumps back up a third, comes back down a third to the B flat, and then we have these whole step intervals again. And then he finishes the line by using another minor third to go from B flat to G. All right. So the things that I've chosen to sort of gather from this particular line is that he doesn't get locked into just playing thirds or just playing fourths. He actually cycles between them, and this creates a really, really beautiful feeling of total freedom on his part, and it also keeps your ear guessing on where he's going to go next. You know, if he was just using fourths, your ear would naturally lock onto that interval of a fourth, and then you'd be expecting more fourths, right? But he doesn't do that. He's far too advanced for that. So he's mixing in the major third, the minor third, and the perfect fourth all into one, and he's combining all those with whole steps. So this gives us this really, really compelling line that makes you want to keep listening and really, really hear what he's going to do next. All right, so how do we take this concept and turn it into a usable exercise? Well, one thing that I thought of was, what if you took an exercise where you're combining thirds and fourths, and you're playing them back to back. Now, most of us have probably studied either thirds or fourths. So, you know, you start on a C on your instrument, and you play up in thirds. You play all the way up the scale in thirds, and then you come back down in thirds, right? Or if you're a little bit more advanced, maybe you've done it with fourths too. So you start on that same low C, and then you play the interval of a fourth, right, up and down the scale. These are great exercises. I've done tons of these exercises, and they're awesome, both for your ear and for your fingers on the instrument, right? But what if we were to take an exercise and combine them? So instead of just going straight up the scale with thirds, instead what I'm going to do, and this is exercise number 2 on your sheet, you will start with a third, so C to E. But then instead of going D to F and playing another third, first we're going to play a fourth. So C to E, then C to F. Then we're going to go up to the next note in the scale and do the same thing. So D to F is a third, and then D to G is a fourth, and then so on and so forth right up the scale. So now you're thinking on kind of the next level, right? You're not just taking a pattern and repeating that pattern up and down. You're actually taking these 2 sets of intervals and you're playing them back to back, which requires a little bit more thinking, and you have to be ready for a little bit more complicated thinking, you would say, and complicated motions on your instrument as well. So then if you look at the third measure of the exercise, we're going to do the same thing but down, and we're actually going to reverse the order. So I'm starting on C in the third measure, playing up a fourth to F, then I'm coming back to that C and playing a third to E. Now I'm coming down, playing B, playing a fourth up to E, then coming back to that B, playing a third up to D. So could you see how this, especially in the harder keys, this could really make you think in a very different way? And that's what it's all about. When you think in different ways, you're going to sound different from everybody else, and that's ultimately what we're all seeking, is a unique voice on the instrument. So let me play this exercise for you so you can hear what it actually sounds like in action. So you can hear the difference between the thirds and the fourths, and we're always coming back to that common tone so that we're practicing each interval off of each common tone or root or whatever you want to call it, really. We're just practicing both in one exercise. Now, if I were to go and practice these, which I think I'm going to, I would probably extend them much more, right? So if I'm playing saxophone, I'm always going to do full range. If I'm playing trumpet, I would probably extend it to my usable range on the trumpet. But basically, I was just presenting them to you in a very shortened fashion so that you can get the idea. Now, just like everything that I show you on this podcast, you need to go and figure out other ways of doing it yourself, right? So this is just using two intervals, okay, a third and a fourth. So if you were to learn this in every key, or whatever keys you wanted to, then maybe you could go and figure out an exercise on how to play, fourths and fifths. Or you could keep the third and practice going between thirds and fifths. There's literally hundreds of possibilities of what you could do with these interval exercises, and all of them would benefit you in some way. Not only your ears, but your facility on the instrument and everything else, okay? So you got to take this idea and you got to run with it, just like everything that I show you on this podcast. I wish I could turn these into hour-long podcasts, but that would just be too much, right? I couldn't even do that every week. So take the exercises, do something with them yourself, make them your own. Try to think outside of the box a little bit, and you're definitely going to see results from this, all right? Send me any questions if you have them, and we'll see you guys next week with a brand new episode. Please go onto our Facebook page and give us a 5-star review. We're really trying to get some reviews going on the Facebook page so we can get more and more followers just like you. If you're not a follower on our Facebook page, you can find us at 10 Minute Jazz on Facebook. We post a ton of stuff there every week, and it's just a good hang over there, included with jokes and everything. All right, so we'll see you next week. Remember, if you enjoy the podcast, we're a lot like your local public TV station or public radio station. We need your support, so go and sign up for the Inner Circle on our website, 10minutejazzlesson.com. We really appreciate that support, and I promise you're going to get more than your $10 worth every single month. All right, we'll talk to you guys next week. Have a good one.